Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a chat about one of the sneak peek streams, which was the Russian stream with BVVD on. If you don't know who BVVD is, he is the game director of War Thunder. He recently did the big Q&A, talking about all the things that are coming in the future, and also some decisions that are made when it comes to the game and how it's all set up. And in the sneak peek stream, he usually talks about things that are going on the dev server, or new stuff which is coming out in the next major update, and giving some additional context. It's generally nice to hear his words because of the fact he is the game director, so therefore he's usually quite knowledgeable about what is going on. And in this video, we're going to go through some of the things that he said, to go through and talk about them, because I think it's important that the whole community understands what is said. Now, just remember, this stuff is translated, so it isn't always going to be 100%, especially when you have a look at different languages and how things are said, so always take it with a grain of salt. If you want to watch the Russian stream, it's on the channel, or it's on the War Thunder official channels as well, but let's go through it. Let's talk about what BVD said, and also discuss it a little bit. As always, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe and also like the video. Let's get started. So, this is first of all from Diaboli, so thank you Diaboli for setting this up, and we start off talking about the new Hangar. It has an actual limit of how many weapons it can show, so the algorithm that's spacing out each weapon around the plane is based on its size, so if there are too many, some will be missed out. So the first row is for AA weapons, and the further ones, or the second row, is for air to ground. So the general idea is to make it set up in a way around it, but there's probably spacing equal to like the circle that's around it, and since there are some vehicles which have ridiculous amounts of armaments, it's not too surprising that that's going to be the case. One of the things I should also note is you can turn off this feature if you want to. You just go into customization, and there is a little kind of on-off switch there, which I didn't notice on the dev server, but I was told about afterwards, so I'll kind of show that in a future video. Also, the new UI in Air specifically itself will actually remove itself if it detects you are not using the options in it. So you know how at the bottom of the screen there's a bunch of just like little buttons that have been there for the longest time for Air, and they've been adding more and more to them over time, and they have been incredibly just obnoxious to a lot of people. Well, in this update, they are changing some of the icons. They're making it smaller, and also it will literally just detect whether you want to see it or not, or whether you want to use specific ones and not others. And this to me is actually really cool. So it's just going to auto detect this stuff. It is a little bit worrying because sometimes you want to use specific things which you only use like in a small amount of situations, and you want it on the screen. But I suppose you could probably set it up to actually just kind of be there anyway. But yeah, it's kind of cool that they're adding this stuff in. Also, the radar UI, it has a new button that works as a friend or foe filter for the planes that have that option. So you can actually set up something really cool on it, meaning that you can kind of click to see what is friend or foe. You can either set it up to show friend and foe, or you can set it up just to see your friends, or just to see your foes, or allies and enemies, as they're known in War Thunder. And that's pretty sick. It's just another option that is there and is on the dev server. The next part, the Terminator guns are made to not shoot in pairs, which we all know, but also one was loaded with AP and the other one with HE. So it's better to be able to shoot for longer and to save barrels from overheating. So they're actually going to do this in War Thunder 2. So right now, the Terminators aren't properly modeled in the game when it comes to how their belts work, but what you'll have is you'll have one of the belts which will be attached to one of the vehicles, one of the guns, and one of the belts that's attached to the other one. The only interesting thing for me is if you'll be able to take, let's say, 2 APDS belts, but the way that he's actually talked about it here is you'll probably bring one APDS and then one HE or one APT. So similar to what you see from other vehicles where you're not able to take more than one APDS for belt. And that kind of sucks, you know, it limits it a little bit, but it also means that, you know, it's a little bit more historical. Then he went on to talk about the MiG-25. This will be the winter event vehicle. It will be the 4th one and the highest one, so basically the main reward of the event, which, let's be honest, that shouldn't be too surprising. Like, for the vehicle, it's been wanted for a long time, People have talked about it for ages, and it's nice to finally see it, especially after BVVD talked about it in the summer going into the game. Also, he says at low altitude, the engines will easily rip off the wings, which is something to worry about, and they also don't rule out a tech tree version of it coming in. He also talked about the electronics it's have, so in terms of the radar and all of this stuff, he said at low, it has a bigger version of the MiG-23 electronic set and radar with wider angles, so it should have access to the MTI, which will be nice, especially for those R40s. The issue, of course, is the fact that you won't really be able to use it at lower altitudes in a big way. Also, the service or work altitude of the jet is above 15 kilometers, and it takes 5 minutes to 18 kilometers height altitude. And obviously in War Thunder, that's not very useful because most battles do not take place up there. He also went on to talk about some American vehicles such as the Blackbird, surprisingly, and he says this may come as some sort of collector or event vehicle since it had no weapons and also had to take off with not full fuel load, then refuel in air, which is not an option in the game, so it wouldn't really work too well, but he didn't discount it, and this is something I've been saying a long time when it comes to War Thunder. Nothing is off the table. Even if it is just a random event vehicle that isn't really useful, there's, at least in my opinion, an idea of a hangar decoration where you can get something which people like to have but never really use in the game, and that is something you see there. He also talked about the B-52 and the Tu-95 in comparison might actually be useful in the game, unlike something like an SR-71, and even that would be difficult to implement as well. He also talked about strategic bombers, where he ended up laughing about it, and said not to be rude, but they can be added into the game, but they don't think they'll be in the tech tree. Maybe as collector's events. If they're not as bad to be added, they may try and make it for some events. So it's just the problem with these things, as we've talked about for many years, they don't really fit in how War Thunder works. Maybe in the future, if War Thunder works differently, they would fit. But I'm sure what they're going to do is they're just going to add them in, but as event vehicles, and to be like, hey, look at these things, this is what's here. But yeah, the problem is you can't really fit them in with everything else that is in War Thunder. They will just get annihilated, or they'll just be overpowered. There's no really middle ground with them, which is why it's always going to be weird. He also talked about the Kurganets-25, which is kind of the next, I suppose, evolution of AFV for the Russians. They said they'll add all possible vehicles that make sense to be added in the game in the future, so one day all will be added. So once again, nothing is off the table. This surely, as a set of questions shows you, nothing is off the table. So all of your dreams, all of your wonders, they will come true. You just have to be patient. For the PL-15 missiles, they will be added in the future. They need to implement new mechanics for those new missiles with dual pulse engines, and it changes speed of the missiles based on the distance so that it would have more energy when coming into the target. I swear we have like missiles which have that already. I know they're not modeled like that in War Thunder, but I swear we have them. But yeah, pretty much like, you know how you have good old, you have rockets that go into space, where they have different sets of, different sets of engines, different sets of power banks to be able to get them up there. Well, missiles are exactly the same. The modern ones don't just have the standard booster, they can have a dual booster, which kick in at different times to make sure that they go a further distance. Also, ECM on jets will appear. One version or variant will appear in the first half of the year, maybe even on ships. So it looks like they are working on electronic countermeasures. I'll be interested to see how that works. It's one of those things that should be quite a large addition to the game and make quite a big difference to what's going on. And also, in general, it'll appear before the addition of 5th generation jets, and as implemented of better radio electronics and visibility. So they're just once again continuing to improve all of the kind of defense and offense systems based around radars, which are the main focus of Top Tier and have been for a very long time. Also, they don't have any information about the brimstones on the Eurofighter. I'm guessing people are asking if they were going to add the other kind of seeker heads or the other variants of it technically, but they just say they just don't have any information for it. Submarines also have been in development for over 2 years. or hard development for 2 years. So basically they've been working on it continuously for 2 years, and obviously a little bit before that too. But it's hard to say about that, like when they're going to come out. So they're still working on making them actually work and making them fun, which is something he talked about in the Q&A. One of the things to note about Submarines as well is you may remember last year when a lot of the different community managers were saying there was no, they weren't working on the Submarines. That was a lie. They were, and I don't know. Whatever, we'll move on. White Rock Fortress map won't be in this update, but there is work on it, so it'll probably be going in the next major update. I'm a bit worried about that. White Rock Fortress, as I said previously, has had a lot of issues with it, but the updates that they have done to the maps has been really nice. Also, you can now set out Fire and Forget for AA, even outside of the AA special mode. So we're going to have to see how that's set up, but that sounds kind of interesting. And then also the Japanese AA is big in size as the Patriot or the S-300, which will also appear someday. Missiles have no vector thrust, so won't be good for close-range targets, which is not the targets you usually face anyway. So yeah, there's some confirmation from good old BVVD that the Patriot system and also the S-300s will come into the game, which should not be a surprise. He also says that the Su-30 MKM will be a copy-paste of the Su-30 SM, which at least right now, I suppose it is, since it has all of the same systems and is set up in the same way. So that's all the information from BVD. A lot of cool stuff to talk about and a lot of cool stuff to go through, and just kind of caps off the start of this dev server season. So as always, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about all of these additions, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.